All right, welcome to another episode of the Maker's Bar. I'm so excited about my guest today. We are talking with Shannon Aylesworth. She is the founder and CEO of Ursamin, a platform that is transforming the health journey for chronically ill patients. And so I'm so excited to learn from her today and hear what she's doing and all of her success. So Shannon, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. It's a great show.
It's going to be fun. We're going to have so much fun today. This is going to be great.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I want to open this up. First thing first, I want to know a little bit about what Ursamin is. So tell us a little bit about what this platform is and what you're doing to help these chronically ill patients.
Yeah, it's a loaded question, but I'll try to make it short. So Ursamin is a software platform that helps providers, physicians, your doctors, manage your care better. So what's happened in the last 15 years is chronic illnesses has exploded. And most of the care is happening in your own home. It's what you do every day. It's what decisions you make. It's wearables. And it's not just healthy decisions. It's these chronic illnesses have exploded. It's like 100% in the last 15 years. It's going to grow another 100%. And it's not, you don't end up in the hospital unless you don't manage your disease. So a lot of that data that's being produced that can help you get better care is being produced outside the traditional doctor's office. So our platform software actually helps connect the providers and the doctors with their patients remotely without you having to go into the office to see that information. So it helps bring data together. And it's really, it's more complicated. I'm trying to find out like the simplest way to say it because I'm always like, listen, for people who don't know technology, it literally is, let me simplify it. It's you will have all of your access to your data in one place. You will share that access with your doctor. You will make sure he has everything, things like not just your medical records, but your wearable data, meaning your Apple Watch, your Fitbit. A lot of us don't know my Apple Watch is now producing, an EKG every day. Does my doctor see it? No, but it's available data for my doctor to see. So chronic illness management and making sure people stay healthy, especially things like diabetes, is about having the right data at the right time. And most of us have on average 6 to 10 doctors to manage our care, and they don't have all your data. So we just make that data more available and accessible to the doctors.
Yeah, no. And it's interesting. I'm intrigued by this because I, as a patient who has a condition that has to be chronically managed, right? And I have several doctors, and yes, so I'm listening to all of this and I'm thinking, wow, this is like good words in my ear right now as I'm hearing this because I can, it resonates, you know what I mean? So I love that. What I would love to know is how this came about for you, what the inspiration was behind this. Because I think, as entrepreneurs in businesses, we always have a story that sort of leads us to that destination, right? It's not like we go from here to here. There's this journey that we go through. So I'd really love to know what was the inspiration behind this for you.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I love that question. It's a bad story in the end, but it's a good story. So like what you said is you have a chronic illness. I have 3. And they're all back related and arthritis, right? So there's groups of 3. They say if they come in groups of 3 or they come with friends, one brings friends, right? Autoimmune diseases, you get thyroid issues, you get one, right? Everything brings friends. And that's generally what happens because as doctors have gotten better at solving the acute issues, hey, you have stage 4 cancer or you have heart failure, they've learned how to slow down disease progression. And so now we all are living with this day-to-day chronic illness management. My mother, in 2005, was diagnosed with COPD and emphysema. And she had some lung issue that they didn't know, a third one that they never really knew. And that was back in the early days. So for 10 years, we spent trying to manage her care. She went from 1 doctor a year to 4 visits a year to 8 doctors. And nobody ever had her information. It was this constant ping-ponging around doctors. And I, as her caregiver, spent a ton of time trying to help get that data so that the next appointment, that doctor would have the data that they needed. And by data, it might just be your O2 and how your O2 is doing today, because that's what happens with COPD and emphysema, right? Big smoking family. She had that. And in 2015, she had some acute thing happen with her pancreas. And she ended up jaundiced, ended up in the hospital, handed around. She went septic 3 times. I can't even mention the money that we spent trying to keep her healthy when she got home. And we couldn't because nobody knew. They didn't know what was going on until we ended up in the ER. The doctors didn't know. The handoff between the hospital and the doctor never happened. So we'd go home. I ended up being basically her nurse. And then she ended up passing because the guy who diagnosed her pancreas, which was never conclusive, said it was cancer, pushed her into chemo. Her lungs couldn't handle the chemo. The number one side effect of chemo is irreparable lung tissue, scar tissue. She 2 months. She made it 2 months. And there was nothing we could have done. And it was when I talked to her primary care where she didn't know, she didn't know my mother had died. She was like, I never would have given her chemo because her lungs couldn't handle it. They were already compromised. It's like COVID hitting somebody who's already asthmatic and lung compromised. COVID's going to take you down. That's what happened. And it was the regret. It was the regret, the anger. I wanted to sue somebody, to be honest. I wanted to sue everybody in her care. And, the money that I spent just trying to get her data in between doctors and arguing with doctors. But I'm a salesperson and I'm a solution person. And I went, okay, well, I started talking to people and everybody had the same problem. Everybody kept saying, I struggle. I can't get the right care. I go to the doctors. They don't have my information. Why do I have to keep filling out the same form? Why every doctor? I had one PT who asked my dad for his DNR paperwork, PT. And I go, why do you need this? And she's like, well, what if he falls over and has a heart attack and dies? And I go, well, just let him die. I mean, that's how callous we've gotten. And he goes, yeah, just let me die. We're like, it's fine. He'll just let him go. But like the process and that, and my mom and us handing around healthcare proxies and DNRs, and there's a long story. But the fact is that the impact of my mother dying and knowing that I could have done something about it was preventable, talking to everybody. And then I'm a technologist. I'm a sales technologist. And I started looking at why this data isn't flowing the way it should. And I was like, it's a disaster with the way chronic illnesses are growing. 110 million people in this country have at least one where the care has changed. And I'm a solution person. And I'm like, this can be done. Every other industry has done it. Healthcare has some different rules and some other processes in place that need to be worked on. And I had to learn that myself. But it's a big operational change. And that's, my mom and my dad. I take care of my dad. And every day I'm reminded of, how many he's got 12 doctors and 12 portals to get his information.
Yeah.
He can't because he's 80 years old. So I have to do it. And I have 9 of my own, all of my information. And my doctors are frustrated. The doctors are infuriated. They're just as frustrated. So I started talking to doctors. I'm doing a whole advisor panel right now. I have so many people saying I'll help because this is a huge problem that needs to be shifted, and they're ready.
Yeah. And I'm listening to your story. Well, and a couple takeaways in this, I always feel like we're our best clients, right? Like our stories really become our reason that catapult us into doing the things that we do. But I'm listening to all of this and I'm thinking on the patient side of things. And I'm like, I've had pancreatitis from a condition that I have. It's awful. And I'm listening to this story that you're telling right now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can just imagine, your position and then your mom and then your dad's, because I know even, just you think about prescriptions alone, like when you go to different doctors and they're giving you, and I've had situations where I've gone into different doctors and I'm like, can you even mix these medicines together? Like they don't have the same records to know, can you put this with this? And and so I can only imagine what you guys went through with your mother, because I can on my own, for the deal that what I've had to deal with, I know what it's like when I have to go. I've been in the ER several times with it. And then we're trying to get my doctors lined up and they don't even know what they're dealing with when you walk into the ER, and you're trying to get this doctor has information. This one has information. My goodness.
It might be out, and it might be out, or it might be out of hours. We have a pediatrician, a pediatric hospitalist. And she said, listen, the offices are open 9 to 5. Kids don't get sick during work hours. They always get sick in the middle of the night. And so then I got to wait till the next morning to try and get the information. At that point, they just rerun the tests. And she said she's amazing. She's actually on my YouTube show for anybody who wants to see that. And she was like, listen, she goes, And then we got to poke them again. We got to stick them with needles again.
Right.
And it's one thing to poke an adult with 15 needles. It's another to have to keep repoking a child because you can't get the information, and then think about their ability to diagnose quickly. It doesn't exist. And that's why I found it wasn't just the patient side, because my mother had 24. I counted them up. I'm like, it's almost surreal, but we kept trying to get a different answer for her with her pancreas. There was no clear, they knew what it wasn't. So it was kind of a bit of a dart. That's why I was mad. I was like, you didn't dart at pancreatitis, right? I wish we kept saying, "Are you sure it's not pancreatitis? Are you sure? Do you know where this is coming from?" And that's what a lot of doctors are saying today. They don't know where stuff is coming from. So all they can do is try and prevent that downward slide. But with kids, it's even more so, because you're talking about, they're coming in at night. And she said, listen, us as doctors don't want to take our kids to the ER because it's overloaded from patients being mismanaged before you end up in the ER.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So how long has your company then officially been in business?
How long have I been plotting it? It was about a year in after my mom died. So 2018, when I started thinking that it was, when I realized that my career had been kind of built for this. It was like, this is what I've done in the other industry, is this edge, helping improve operations. It's all about just operational flow. In healthcare, they're calling it care ops. In the telco and the cable guys, they just call it operations. And that's when I was like, oh, I can do this. There's, I just have to. So I looked around for a platform, didn't see it. And it was in 2020 when I decided, after studying a bit and saying, okay, what do I want to build? How do I want to build it? Talking to doctors. 2020 is when I founded the company and started building in the following year.
Gotcha. Very good. Congratulations. Well, I love it. I think what you're doing is a good thing. It's needed. I mean, for you, obviously, yourself firsthand, but I'm rooting you on the other side, because I'm telling you, it's definitely needed, because there are a lot of us out there that have, these conditions, and it is frustrating when you have to start over. I mean, I remember, I wrote a book in 2019 chronicling a nerve condition that I was diagnosed with back in 2012. And Shannon, you probably this is going to resonate with you. Probably because I had to start writing things down, typing it on a Word doc. And I would just basically take the Word doc, print it out, or email it to the doctor and say, just read this. I don't even have the energy to explain this to you again. Yes. I have been to this many doctors. I've talked to this many people. Just read it, and can you help me? Because if you don't think you can, then please don't waste my time, Yes. So we've been there, and so I think something like this, it sounds amazing to me. And I love what you're doing on that front.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, you just made me think of the mental health side of it. Yeah. So that's the other piece, is the mental health of my mother, as she was just spiraling, and hearing what you say is like, I'm just too tired to explain it again. I'm too tired to explain it to another doctor, to another. So that's another big correlation that the healthcare community has said, these chronic illnesses are driving up. Like, if you were to look at the heart of it, of mental health, a lot of it is from not being able to manage these chronic illnesses. It's depressing.
Gotcha. Yeah. Gotcha. All right. Well, I would love to know, because obviously you're still kind of in the beginning stages, and you said you've been plotting this thing out and building it and all that good stuff. Yeah. And you said a lot of really important things, I think, already, but I would love to know, like, maybe some of the challenges as an entrepreneur, because there are going to be other entrepreneurs listening to this. So maybe some of the challenges that you've been facing, and it may be coming from that other side where you were in the sales on, I'm assuming you were working for another company and then coming into this and creating your own thing. So that might be something to lean into.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, coming into healthcare was hard. Healthcare is a multi-headed, multi-pronged industry. There's so many things to consider, and even just, they're very technical. They're very technically driven. People say that healthcare they don't understand technology. And I'm like, no, they don't like their laptops and their phones as much as the rest of us as consumers. We want it to be easy, and we want it to be simple. We want it to be user-friendly. And they're on a technical platform that's 30 years old. And that was not when user-friendliness. I mean, remember when Apple came out with their computers. So I found that to be surprisingly refreshing. But the buying model, the different stakeholders, there's so many stakeholders, and everybody's got a different business model, and there's insurance payers and all that. So I sold to like Verizon and the big cable companies. I mean, that's complex. It's a complex model, right? But it's one business model where in healthcare, there's so many different business models. So it was that transition from a single business model to how do you track the business model? And then how do you scale that because of the way government and insurance roll it out? It's decided nationally, but they implement it locally. So that was a big, and it still is. I learn every day. And the good news is I have a whole bunch of people are like, okay, we're going to figure out how to make this happen because there is such a huge unmet need. And the reason it hasn't been successfully moved in the right direction is because of that. That and just being a founder in the noise of post crazy investment. I mean, you see the VC now, right? Like, and they say as startups, there's kind of these running jokes on LinkedIn, the one where they've got like Rhonda Rousey and she's all beat up and they're asking her about her startup experience. And she's like, it was well worth it. And I will say that is, you know, like I kept saying, I wish there was a book that said, here's how you do a startup from step 1 to, you know, 50. But there's truly no one path. And I said, I don't know who I told the other day, I said, it's like a double black diamond mogul run, man. You're just constantly, as long as you embrace the bumps, embrace the obstacles, the faster you go through it, the faster you're going to learn because you're testing. Does everybody have this problem? Does everybody want this problem to be solved? Is everybody willing to put money to it? So I'd say that's, you know, my 2 big things was a transition into healthcare and then the startup journey. And then you put those together and it's like, there are days where I'm like, I just want to go back to bed and be like, I'm done. But that's why I got a picture of my mom.
Well, your why sounds like it's big enough to keep you pushing forward in this. And yeah, I mean, I think the entrepreneur journey is just, it's not for the faint of heart. You have to definitely develop resilience and have tenacity and you got to weather through and you got to do your market research. And, you know, there's a lot to it. And I think sometimes that's what's so great about when we get to talk about this on these shows is because I think sometimes, you know, people get in and they're like, oh, it's going to be just great. I'm going to go in. I got this great idea. I want to bring it, you know, to the table and there's not going to be anything. And then we all know that's not at all true, you know?
Yeah, no, somebody said to me, they go, oh, you got the startup bug. No.
Yeah.
Listen, I've done startups my whole career, but I never did it from the ground up like this. I've done startups at Series A and I've done IPO and I thought I was this really savvy startup person. And I've learned to be like, have you started it literally from nothing? Because if you haven't, you really have to understand how hard that is and how to pick and choose the right people to surround yourself with. So it's definitely, I'll tell you, my why is, I know now why they just kept saying zero in on your why and your why and your why. And mine used to be like a wah, wah. And I'm like, no, let me tell you. I was in the Peace Corps. That was hard. I sold the telco. That was hard. I was pretty sure I was prepared for this. And then I was like, I was not prepared for this at all. But the good news is I had 25 years of preparation to get my gloves on.
Good for you. That's awesome. So what do you feel like has been the most satisfying moment in this? Because I know there's got to be some good moments in this because there always is.
Every day I get a text or an email. I might even tear up. A LinkedIn post. Somebody says, I see it now. I see it. Like, this is like, people will say, I see it. Like early on, I think they were like, oh yeah, if my mom is in the same situation, it was like one of those things where people like a year later would say, oh my God, you're right, Shannon. I'm like, I know, you just got to live it to feel it and really see it. But every day, and right now I'm doing this campaign and I get these notes and they're like, listen, I can't give you my time, but what do you want from me? Can I post a validation to your investors? Let me tell you about my son. Let me tell you about my daughter. Let me tell you about my parent. Let me tell you about me. Let me tell you about my wife. The doctor's coming to me and saying, like this one doctor I just had, and he's like, my wife's got multiple chronic issues and we're in and out of the ER, and he's a doctor. They're doctors and they're in and out. So that is like, that's what I live for. I was at the Peace Corps, everything I've done. I didn't get into sales because I wanted to, you know, make $1 billion. I think we all hope that we will at some point because life would be easier and I wouldn't have to fundraise. But it really is about making a difference. People want it. And that's why when they say as a startup founder, they're like, what's your why? And then do you have product market fit? And I'm like, every day somebody tells me, please keep going. Please keep going. Let me tell you my story. And that is, I mean, if this is what I do for the rest of my career, I'm a pretty happy person.
That's great. That's great. It's a fun question too. And I think that, yeah, it comes down at the end of the day. I saw something the other day, and I've always said, said this about work, is that when we get so honed in on the dollar, we've got to make money at what we're doing, right? Like we have to have money to survive. So we've got to have that.
Right.
But when that becomes the only factor for why we're doing something, it really boggles it down. It makes the process not worth it. And I think we become bitter at all of it. But when we do it from a place of, we feel like we're creating, making some kind of a lasting impact, or creating some kind of change, then we come from a different place. And I think that's when it takes a new life, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's probably why every investor will say, what's your why? And then it's, it's all about, it's all about your why. It's been my whole career. It's been like, okay, what am I doing? I was part of the whole streaming upgrade. And what I figured out was my career was meant for this kind of change at the edge, which is what it is. And knowing how to do that without disruption, because I serviced, again, I think told you, to cable, which was like Spectrum, which everybody will go, Spectrum. 24. We could take down a network of 24 million viewers. And so we were really crazy protective about, and process oriented, which is very much like healthcare. So there is that, but it was the point, even if this didn't happen, I would have done something where there was more meaning in giving back. And I think, to your point, that's what you're like, at some point, listen, we need money to live.
Yeah.
But yeah, like somebody posted, would you take love and happiness or money and fame? I was like, well, listen, I have love and happiness. And if I could have some money to do what makes me happy more, I'll take the money. But absolutely. The question is not at the sake of what gets me up every morning.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's good stuff. Thank you for that. So I would love to know, because you're kind of you said a lot of really great things here, and you're in the beginning stages still, kind of getting this really up and rolling. And it sounds like you're having some great success, which is important. I'd love to know, like, how, what you see the long-term vision of this. Like, what does this maybe look like for you and for the company?
Yeah, that's a fun one. It's a fun one, but it's hard to answer. I see it in, well, like, if you're like, hey, do you want my vision? I see an agnostic platform that has patients and providers that can share data and communicate. I tell people when I try and simplify it, I'm like, put Slack and Dropbox together, or Teams, but for healthcare. It really is about empowering the patient and giving the providers, I shouldn't say providers, because providers is a broad term for anybody in healthcare, the doctors, your primary care, your specialists. It gives them satisfaction back, because they can help you. Hey, you don't have to write that down on a piece of paper. Guess what? She's seen 12 doctors already, and here's when she saw them. They can automatically, we're looking at things like a calendar. It's weird, because the number one feature, as we continue to poll and we go live, the shared calendar is like the number one feature, because the patient can't remember, the caregiver can't remember, the provider can't find it. So a shared calendar, see where that patient has been, provides so much insight. And so that's like, I just see like a Teams, but for doctors, where you're doing pickup teams and everybody's got the information they need. It's a long thing to build. We'll start smaller, but the vision is, the doctors have a full-blown platform that they can start working together on, something like, again, like Slack with security, of course. Now the Slack doesn't have security, but obviously you've got a lot more rules in the healthcare space about patient data and things like that have to be careful, but it really is an agnostic layer. I was in a class, digital health class, that talked about how it will move this way, where there's kind of this agnostic layer of data. So just your stuff, and the doctor, you say you can have it, and then you can take people out and put it back in. And it's just it's a fascinating, it's where it's going to go. It's how do we get there, and how do we do it safely and effectively for the patients and the doctors.
Yeah. From the way you're describing it, I just see the appointments between the communication between the doctor and the client, just looking at them coming into the office or Zoom, however they're doing a patient appointment, that process being more effective, instead of you walking in and they have pages and pages of their notes and nothing else to look at. And you have to, like we've already mentioned, go all back through that whole process again. I mean, if you think about going in to the doctors, I don't know about your doctors there, but I know here, you walk in, it's a 15-minute visit. you can't get anything out in 15 minutes, right? And wouldn't it be great if they had all of your stuff in one spot? They could look at that and say, okay, here's what we're looking at.
It's like, listen, they can biometrics you in a retail shop for all of your shopping history, right?
Right.
Why can't you biometrics me? I come in and that doctor's immediately like, listen, one of the books that I read, and we talked about, I think before we got on, about Audible books versus reading a book, and the doctors that have been coached and read this paragraph, and it was all about moral injury that the doctors are going through because they don't have enough time to spend with you because they have to ask you all these questions to try and get that history. So they can only spend 20 minutes with you properly to get paid for what they do. And again, we all have to make a living.
Right.
And they spend 16 of it, like you said, 15, 16 of it collecting data. How about biometric me? Like that's really vision, like literally biometric me and my stuff is there. And listen, this isn't about exploding data everywhere. Early on, I was like, yeah, free the data. No, that's not it, because not everybody needs all data, and not everybody need, like, listen, there's diagnosis that the doctor wants to sit you down and have a conversation with you about and things like that. So in order to do that, though, that you've got to collect it. And the only person who knows what's accurate is the patient. And that's where we said, let's re-look at the data flow, because the patient really knows what they've been through, the caregiver, and why the caregiver is so critical. And you see nurses are big advocates of having an advocate, because you can't remember, you get in front of that doctor, you forget everything. They call it white coat syndrome. It's a very real thing that you forget. So yeah, it is everything. And as people consumerize their health more, right? With the wearables, the clinical wearables, the RPM, remote patient monitoring at home, because like my dad, now they can do measurements at home. That data is all getting stranded and it's not being pulled back. And that's where it really starts to get exciting, when you go, oh my God, I walk in and just scan my eyeball. Like clear, come on, TSA for patient access.
Yeah, wow, love it, love it. All right, so I would love to know, you mentioned earlier, we were talking about circling yourself. I picked up on this, circling yourself with the right people. And I've always said this, right? Like, we know this circle of influence is like the most important thing, who surrounds you and who's in your space and stuff. I would love to know, your thoughts on that, because I think that's a really important topic for entrepreneurs. Yeah, I think it's important for everybody, really, is who are your people that you're hanging around. But even as entrepreneurs, I think it can make a difference in how you make, what you do, make or break your business.
Yeah, it's, I valued it in my career as a leader in a company, but I don't think I realized how valuable picking the right ones is until I started my company. And I made a lot of mistakes on maybe not picking the right ones because I didn't know what I was looking for. So knowing that you set expectations up front, like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Like I'm doing this now with advisors. I'm like, okay, I got 3 tiers. Some are going to be in and out. We just need a few questions. We don't want anybody to feel like they're used or moved along. Some that are like, I have this one doctor who's like, he was a family physician for 35 years. He now does hospice. And I'm like, I just need a sensei. I will be your grasshopper. Meet with me once a month and just spin me up and tell me where to go, because I want to do this right. And so it does take a team. It does take a village. You say that about kids, but everything that you do is a board of people who have been experienced and believe in you and believe in your mission. Your mission is really important. I believe, and that's one of my big lessons, is having people that have experienced this or understand it. I did that in my previous job. Like it was Wi-Fi. People loved Wi-Fi. It was the hey-fay. It wasn't as exciting. It definitely wasn't mission driven like this is. So I think not just who are the right people and setting expectations, but people who believe what you believe. Do they have a why? People who don't have the right why. I just had somebody who came in for a month and was like, I'm like, what's your why? What's your why? And she's like, I want to do something meaningful. So they gravitated to me because I was doing something meaningful and they saw my happiness at doing it, but it wasn't her why. So that's the other piece. Again, I think we all continue as we get older to recreate that circle. It doesn't mean you're leaving anybody behind. You're just creating the circle that helps you get where you need to go to today.
Yeah, it made me think of like what I've heard. You probably have heard this too, is that saying like the people that started with aren't the same people that get you to the next, the next place. And so I've always had, I feel like, mentors on my journey, and it probably, like you said, I didn't realize the value of it until later on, and so now I've been pretty selective about what kind of people I bring in for certain things, like who do I want to collaborate with? Who do I look to ask questions? You know, and that's why I love talking to you guys, you know, that are doing all these, because I get so much information just having conversations with you guys, you know, and learning. So I think it's great. And it is important to be careful about, you know, whom you choose to put in your space, and always, and I had a really good mentor in my previous career that always said, you know, don't take advice from anybody you wouldn't trade places with. And I always laughed about it, because it, you know, yeah, we take him, we listen to people, but we have to be kind of discerning about what information we decide to use, you know? And so that's how I've always been, is like, I'll listen, but I'm going to be pretty selective about which people I take that advice from. If I'm going to decide to run a marathon, I want to talk to somebody that's ran the marathon.
Yeah. Or that they've got the same style as you, right? I mean, my CEO of my last gig, I mean, she's an amazing mentor, but she had different experiences than I did. And so and she was marketing, I was sales. Like, and again, you're like, do you listen? Do you not listen? And we found a really great place, because we would be like, well, like, I wouldn't take that advice. And then she'd just be mad, right? When she wouldn't be mad, it's just, right. You're like, listen, it's not how I would handle it. And that's okay. And that's okay too. That's why I was like, just help me understand the vision. That's why I say that why are you together? We're really great friends now. And I'm like, I get now why you gave me that advice. I wasn't grown up to understand it. And I wasn't grown up enough yet to realize, listen, she did the startup from the ground up. She had already been beaten up. She knew, but I didn't appreciate it until I'd been through the experience myself. So it really is, and not devaluing, I think being able to say, like one of my friends said, you're going to lose a lot of friends. And I go, really hope I don't. And I did lose some valuable friends because I didn't set the expectations. I didn't know what the expectations were. I didn't know. I was like, we'll be best friends forever. And then things would go sideways. And all of a sudden you're trying to figure out how to manage that relationship along with, you know, what you need from a business perspective. And it gets hard. So be careful, I guess. Maybe I'm thinking about writing a book on starting a company, but everybody probably does it, right? About like the mistakes I made.
But it's your thing, you know, and I always feel like whatever story and message we have to sell or put out there, or however you want to use the words, we're both in sales, we've been in sales, so we kind of can use that. But I think your story resonates with certain people. And that's why even like when I, you know, my other show that I do, I bring a lot of people on that do the same thing that I do. And I never feel threatened by it, because although we're all saying sort of the similar messages, we all say it in very different ways. And I could say something 10 times to these people and they never get it. And that one person comes in and says the same thing in a different way, and the light bulb goes off and it's like, hello. So I think our stories are all valuable. And that's why, I mean, if you think about all the motivational books that are out there, the principles are really the same, right? They're just spun in different ways.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I have another coach that said that. She goes, don't do comparisonitis. She goes, listen, your story is your story. How you go through it is how you go through it. And there's enough people out there who want to hear your version of it. Because it resonates with them. So you're spot on there.
Yeah, it's good. So I got 2 more questions for you, and then we'll wrap this up. It's been great. I've enjoyed chatting with you. It's been fun.
Me too.
I would love to know, how do you define success for you and for your business? Like, what does that look like for you? I think you've already answered it, but I want you to tell us again.
Oh, success is going to be, God, how many people, patients say that we've made their life easier, and doctors who say they're grateful. Like I have been told over and over again that doctors don't want this. And I keep going, and they won't do it. Doctors are like working in silos, doctors this, and the doctor's like, they're gaslighting you, Shan. They're gaslighting you. As competitors, don't talk to everybody. They're good. So yeah, I think just being able to see, when we'll get there. Right now, our definition of success is we want to go live on the provider side. So we've been live on the consumer side for most of the year, for patients and caregivers, testing out features and making sure that our interface is what they want, and seeing, you know, how do you, like, really interesting things that we didn't think about before, which is like the account profile is down on the left, it should be up on the right. Like there's stuff like that we've just been testing. So there's short-term goals, which is just get the provider, the doctor dashboard up and running so we can test that. Because most people go, I don't believe you can do it. That's usually what they say, is I don't believe it. I'm like, we're doing it today. And they're like, no, you can't. We're like, yes, we can. It's pretty unique. And so success is getting that up from a business perspective, is getting that up. But the real success is going to be just watching their faces. When the doctors at one of the hospitals went, so sure, so when's it going to be ready? And I go, we're live. We don't like the interface because you always go out with something that's MVP-ish that's, not going to be the prettiest. He's like, the fact that you can do it at all is amazing. So that's success every day. Like I said, when I hear somebody says, oh my God, I get it. Let's go.
Yeah. It's the impact, I think, and the making the
Impact.
difference. It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like, and we used to call it motherhood and apple pie. It sounds cheesy because everybody goes, oh, I want to make a difference. Again, what's your why?
Right.
Yeah, it's seeing people not die like my mom. Seeing
Yeah.
caregivers, like, listen, women are being placed in a caregiver role more and more. I had to give up so much of my potential retirement that I was trying to build towards. We're the first generation of women who really, truly can build wealth. By wealth, just enough to retire with, where like my mom's income was nothing. And we're doing that, but now we're being forced to go be caregivers. Like, so there's so many bigger things that are involved. Yeah. It just would be a longer podcast. So
I can see, I'm listening to you and I can see what you're doing and the difference. I mean, it's huge. It really is. It's huge. And I think what you're doing is awesome. So keep pushing and don't listen to the naysayers. Don't listen to the naysayers. Yeah. One last thing I want to ask you real quick. Like I said, you said a lot of really good things in here. And I think anybody that goes through this are going to get a lot of takeaways in this, but I'd love to know like any last minute things you want to say, any advice to maybe an up and coming, entrepreneur. Maybe they're going to start something like this, or hopefully not the maybe they're going to do something different, but whatever it is,
listen, that's like you said, everybody's thing is their thing. They see it differently. And listen, if more people got into this, I'd be happy. Somebody asked me once, what if Anthem or somebody bought you or wanted you exclusive? I just tell them to buy me, because if you make me exclusive, then you either it's going to destroy it, or I've got no other customers. I'm now singly dependent. Just buy it. But what would happen is you'd start this motion of moving, and this has to go that way. The question is, where's it going to happen? What's the business model? How do we do it? How do we do it so that patient safety? I mean, that's why it takes so long, is you got to think about how the safety happens and the risk and medical improvements. There's way more to it than I thought. And I've got, like, again, that's where you get your mentors. But the question was, what's the one? Wait, sorry. Say the question again. I got off the.
That's okay. Oh. Any last minute advice you'd give to maybe somebody going into the entrepreneur space? You were on the track. You were going there.
I was getting there. Listen, the person who referred me, Mr. Lawrence, I said, he was a founder 10 years. He's been running his company for 10 years. I go, I should have found you 2 years ago. Find a founder that has successfully done it. And if you're lucky enough, ask them because they're going to show you their mistakes, their positives, their what do you need, what do you not need. Find somebody who's like you. Like, again, there's a lot of technical founders who don't have salespeople. Build your network of people and ask questions, be humble. Like, you just got to be open and be like, yeah, I screwed up. That's the one thing that keeps me going, is I'll be like, yep, I screwed that one up. And what everybody wants to see is you've learned from it, you're tweaking and you're moving. So if you can find a startup founder, I'm not there yet. I can tell you, like, I'm only a 2-year founder, right? There's people who have years and years. And if you can get their ear, I'm like, I wish I had thought and met him before, because he's got so much good, like, oh no, Shannon, don't do that. Go this direction.
He's fun. I got to talk to him on Maker's Bar. So
he's fun, isn't he? He's fun. He's good.
So this has been good, Shannon. Thank you so much for all your wisdom. And I know you're learning and growing and going through all this process. And that's what it is. It is definitely a process, but you are doing good. And I like it. And I think it's awesome. I would like to ask you real quick to share your webpage or your wherever you want us to send people, because there may be somebody that they're going to hear this and go, oh my goodness, I need this. Like, where do I go? So where would you like?
Yeah, no, I love that. So my website is www.ursamin.com. We have a YouTube site for Ursamin, so we'd love you to subscribe to that. We do a lot of videos. I think we're up to 43 episodes where we talk topics. How would the patient use it? How would the doctor use it? How would so-and-so use it? Just like you said, we've got topics left and right. So our YouTube, Ursamin, and then LinkedIn, as well as we do LinkedIn, Facebook, like everybody. And then YouTube is a really big place where the videos are probably more interesting than reading when people like to watch. So thank you. I appreciate that offer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much again for your time, like I just said, and wisdom. And, of course, if our listeners are listening to this and they enjoy the show, hit that subscribe button so you can get all this great content. And all right. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been awesome.
Thank you so much.